Hello my guys, welcome to the channel today. My name is Positron Player and this is the first in a series of videos which are a passion project of my own. Um, we obviously play Galaxy of Heroes, Star Wars mobile phone game, a lot on the channel and I stream it as well. And at the same time, there are obviously other things that I like doing and other things I'm interested in. And this is one such thing, which is something we're going to hopefully run if I'm particularly organized once a week. Well, we release relatively often. Okay, I'm just going to do the videos as often as I can because I know that I've not always been the most reliable when it comes to YouTube videos. Streaming pretty good, YouTube not so good. Now, I am a scientist by day. I have several degrees from one of the three great universities according to Stephen Fry, and I work at it through my day job. At the same time, I love video games, not just Galaxy Verse. I love many other ones. You can kind of see them over there, right? Like all the video games of my PlayStation 3 and 4 and 5, amongst other systems that I play far too many of in my spare time. Now, side note here, one of my first memories actually of computer gaming is that of Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog is, of course, the classic Sega Genesis if you live in America, Sega Mega Drive if you live in England. And I used to play it all the time. And I got to a point when I was like, I don't know, 8 years old or something, when I could finish the whole game in like 50 minutes or something like that. And I was like, man, I am so good at this game. And I could do the first level, which is Green Hill Zone Act 1. I could do it in like 27 seconds. I was like, man, I am a genius. Well, that dream was fun while it lasted. So, as a great man once said, details are important. And this is incredibly apt when it comes to computer games because details being consistent through either a series of games or within a single game can make or break something. People fudging things, people blurring things, people retconning things just for game balance issues or for just a slightly better story they might think or better ending. These things destroy a game. You can take something like The Witcher 3, which is perhaps one of the greatest games of all time, and if you were to follow it through, all the details are so accurately um, maintained to the point where you get different endings based on exactly what you've done. And this is a perfect example of how well you can do something, how brilliant you can do it. On the flip side, you can do something really messy, and it can be to do with the AI, it can be to do with the UI, it can be to do with the main character, the lore of the story, whatever it is. And this can destroy your game. And whilst I'm not going to do too many games quite like that, I am going to take some of the games that are perhaps my most favorite games of all time, or games I played a lot of, and just go through them and pull apart some of the things that really make me go, well, actually, this. So we're going to start with one of my favorite games of all time. And to be honest, we're probably going to go through my favorite 10 or 20 games over the course of the next half a year. Today, it is perhaps my favorite horror game, which is Resident Evil 1 Remake. Now, it's important to say remake because the remake does have some modifications based on the original, of course, being back in the mid 90s, the remake being 2000s, early 2000s, on the GameCube originally, which is where I played it first. Um, and to give you some idea, for anyone who's not played it, or anyone who's not heard of Resident Evil, it, we're just talking just about the first entry, and it is based in the Arklay Mountains, a made-up Midwestern city of Raccoon City. These mountains just off of it, and a forest covering the mountains. And your two main characters, you can choose between either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. You could choose one of the main characters, and you get slightly different stories, not a massive difference, but slightly different stories depending on what you do. And you're sent to investigate a number of grisly murders as a part of an elite police force, if you will, called STARS. you dropped off in the forest, and not to spoil literally the whole game, but you're attacked by mutated dogs of some sort. So you're chased, and you make your way to a mansion, a giant mansion that seems to be initially uninhabited. Nobody there. Lights are on, all the stuff is there, but no one is there. And as you probably know, the more you progress through this mansion, you fight against zombies. So the undead, if you will. And of course, mutations based on that. So we have dogs, plants, sharks. Um, we have spiders. For those of you who don't like spiders, I apologize, but there are giant spiders in it too. Um, and then there are even mutated zombies called Crimson Heads, which are a little crazy. We might mention that later on too. And then there are some boss characters, and in particular, in the remake, you also have a character called Lisa Trevor, who is a mutated, well, originally little girl, not so little by the time you fight her in the game. Um, and of course, the end boss, a character called the Tyrant. So, if you do everything correctly, you can work your way all the way through the game. If you go for the good ending, you save the other player character that you're not playing as. You rescue another NPC, depending on which version of the game, whether you're playing as Jill or whether you're playing as Chris. There are different NPCs, of course, that you bump into. Save the right NPC for that person, and you get to the end. You defeat the tyrant, and then Brad Vickers, the helicopter pilot from your team, comes in, picks you up in the helicopter, and you all fly off to safety back to Raccoon City. Now, straightforward game. The gameplay is third person, kind of isometric. Um, it's from fixed camera angles, which actually are from pre-rendered backgrounds, because of course that was the kind of technology at the time. It works brilliantly because the angles the camera is at for each of the rooms sometimes hides things from you, or hides traps, or hides monsters from you. So it does increase the tension. You step in a room, you're like, I can't see what's going on, because, for example, the camera is facing you as you just walked in, so you don't know what's behind the camera, as an example. So it's brilliantly done, a very incredibly clever game with puzzles and horror and shocks. Not just jump scares, but genuine horror, if you will. So that is the game as a whole. But the game has, unfortunately, many inaccuracies, if you will. So I suppose when it comes to details about Resident Evil 1 in particular, and the remake, is that we should think about the T virus. Now, the T virus is the virus that creates zombies in the game. In subsequent games, be it 2 with the G virus, 3 with the Nemesis, 4 with Las Plagas, 5 with Ouroboros, and so on and so on, you get different viruses and variations on the original virus. However, the first one just has one clean, in inverted commas, virus that it uses to turn dead, um, dead humans or other animals into zombies slash mutations, depending whether it's an animal or a human. So, I guess the first thing to say is, what is a zombie virus? Because we're talking about turning um, people into zombies as a virus. Well, the first thing, of course, is that a zombie virus does not turn anything into a zombie. A zombie, that is to say, an undead um, organism, if you will. A zombie virus is actually a very, very different thing in biology. The World Health Organization has described this in detail, that a zombie virus is actually a virus that is lying dormant for a long time. So, particularly in the ice caps, in the northern regions in Russia and Siberia, where people have been excavating and digging, we found viruses that are 25, 30, 35,000 years old. And we call these zombie viruses in biology. So this is kind of the first, I guess, issue is an inaccuracy, because a zombie virus is not a virus that turns people into zombies. A zombie virus is actually just a virus that comes back to life, if you will. Because I mean, that's basically what it is, right? It's coming back to life. It is a little dangerous, not a massive. It's a little dangerous because we don't have the antibodies to fight this virus. So depending on what it is, these viruses from places like Siberia, like I said, we don't know for sure if they're going to be dangerous or not. They could be completely harmless. But we are trying to take every precaution as we do this digging now, and now that we know these things exist. So the first thing is, zombie virus. That is inaccurate. It's not a zombie virus, right? So, second thing about the T virus, the definition of virus. A virus is an organism that um, simply attaches itself to some sort of host and replicates and hurts the host. A virus is not a parasite, right? It doesn't live with the host to help the host survive. You know, like parasites often do. They don't try and kill the host, right? Parasite in general, because they're trying to survive themselves, and they need this symbiosis, right? You need both to survive, right? A virus, in completely, is out to hurt whatever organism it is, and to kill eventually whatever organism it is. That's basically its modus operandi, right? It doesn't think, of course. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have any kind of thought process. Its only purpose is to replicate and to use stuff up and to kill stuff as part of this replication. So the idea that a virus brings something back to life, and this is to be fair, not just a criticism of Resident Evil 1 or Resident Evil in general, of all zombie type things, is no, you can't have a virus that actually brings people back to life. That is just not a virus. So, second thing, that is inaccurate. That is wrong. I guess the last thing to say specifically about the T virus is that it possesses the ability to modify different species in different ways. So the virus itself is an Ebola based virus, and we've all heard of Ebola, hopefully. Um, it's a highly deadly virus, one of the most dangerous viruses in the world. It is, in the game at least, mixed with the DNA of a plant to give a single stranded um, RNA retrovirus that's non carcinogenic that breaks itself into an organism and edits genes. So if you can take all of that I just said, basically it modifies bits of your body, right? Very simply. But it does not cause cancer. That's really important because, of course, cancer is modifying too, and does, of course, edit or alter your body in different ways, but not in the same as this. So, I guess the last thing to say is that this bit is kind of semi-accurate, I suppose. I mean, the ability to affect different species is well known, right? You could take something like, say, tuberculosis, right, which is, of course, a bacteria rather than a virus. But the idea that tuberculosis, for example, attacks humans in a very different way to, say, um, rabbits, to, say, other small mammals. This would give you some idea that, viruses and bacteria can affect us in different ways. Whether you could argue that it would cause different mutations, I suppose. I mean, like, for example, the Tasmanian devil, which of course is in Australia, for anyone who does not know, is the only species in the world with a transferable type of cancer. It's a type of face cancer. And of course, cancer in general is not actually transmissible, right? So, in theory, I guess, suppose you could argue that different viruses, different bacteria, different diseases can affect you in different ways, just like that cancer does for Tasmanian devils versus cancer for the rest of the animal kingdom. So, I suppose in principle that is possible. Whether you could argue the exact mutations of how extreme the differences are, it's a bit different. I guess you could stretch it in terms of gameplay mechanics. The fact that it's zombie versus a rabid dog versus a giant shark versus a real killer plant, as you may have seen in the teaser. Um, these things, I guess, are different, but in principle, I guess that one's okay. So, continuing on from the virus itself and thinking more about the location now. So, the location is a massive mansion house, which, spoiler, underneath the house is a laboratory. So this is where Umbrella, the company that are evil and devious in this game, generate viruses, and of course where the virus escapes from. So lab underneath. Now, one of the biggest things that has always bugged me about not just this Resident Evil game, all of them, but this one is perhaps the most egregious example of this, is that to progress in the game, you need to go through certain different bits of the mansion. Now, this mansion has got, I don't actually know, I didn't check, but several dozen rooms across. Like, obviously, wing, the left wing, the right wing. You've got the kitchen area, you've got a basement bit, you've got an outside garden bit, tunnels and all this kind of thing, right? The problem being in the game, and this is to make it interesting in terms of game balancing, they have a lot of the doors locked when you first start. Well, that's okay. His in principle is okay, right? Random doors are locked inside the building, but I guess the real issue becomes um, how exactly do you manage to unlock these doors or lock these doors? Because if you think about it for a second, then do Umbrella keep the mansion locked down all the time? In which case, you need, I believe, it's 4 special keys throughout the game to unlock different doors at different times, make sure you get to different parts of the house. Or did they specifically, because there was an outbreak, rush around locking all these doors, putting this hidden there, and so on and so on, to make it difficult for you, setting traps up, right? Because there's, for example, the spike trap with that amazing line where Barry asks Jill, "You were," oh, says to Jill, "You were almost a Jill sandwich," you know. So like having traps randomly strewn across the place, as well as the fact that in one room there's a giant snake, and in another room there's a giant plant. Like, did they just have these lying around? Were these just always there? And the thing is, in the notes in the game, you can run and pick up diary entries, which we're going to talk about in a second too. And in these diary entries, it tells you that these things existed for a while. Like they had been growing and going on. So how did they exactly have the house locked down all the time and able to get? I mean, then the argument is they must have had multiple sets of keys. But then if they have multiple sets of keys, why is it so hard for Jill and Chris to find keys? Why does it take you so long to unlock some of these doors? Of course, there's the side issue. You've got a freaking shotgun. You could just blow a hole in the door. But I suppose you could argue that you're trying to conserve ammo in a very tense, dangerous situation. But be that as it may, the whole locking doors down, random doors thing, needing in the armor key or needing the spade key or the hard key. Actually, I'm thinking it's Resident Evil 2 key names specifically, but the key idea is the same in all of them. You need the hard key, the club key, the spade key, etc., 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 just for certain doors. The mind boggles at who's thought about building this mansion. They do try and pass it off in the explanation in some of the notes in the game you can find about the person who designed the mansion to umbrella specifications for different reasons. But honestly, it's like a super poor attempt to justify game balancing. That's all. So really, the house itself is super inaccurate if we're being really brutally honest, even if it is a seminal location for a horror game. So I could go on and on about Resident Evil 1. And to be clear, as I said before, I love this game. It is so good. But perhaps of all the things I mentioned, be it the virus, be it diary entries, be it the mansion house, there are some other bits, like, for example, the age of Rebecca Chambers and the fact that she's an all elite STARS member who's a medic and she's 18 years old. She's done a medical degree and she's been in training in STARS as an elite soldier by the age of 18. Ignoring all these things, there's perhaps one more that really, really does bug me quite a lot, which is a UI issue, or I guess a game balance issue. And it's one that basically prevents me from playing as Chris Redfield so often when I play the game. Now, as I said earlier on, you can play as both characters, either Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield. And essentially, Jill Valentine is what you call easy mode, and Chris is hard mode. There's no actual difficulty in the game, no difficulty settings in the original, but those two characters, in the way they're designed, actually gives you a different way of playing straight up. So Jill, very famous character, she is a little bit weaker than Chris, so she can take a little bit less damage, but she has a lockpick, so I mean she can get through certain doors that Chris can't get to straight away. Chris has to find keys and then unlock the doors a more traditional way, where she can pick her way through. At the same time, she also has more inventory slots, and I have always found this very confusing. Right, she has 8 inventory slots. Chris has 6. Now, this actually makes a massive difference to the game because, of course, Jill can just hold more stuff, more weapons, more ammo, more whatever it is, which means that she can just go around the game without having to go back and forth so often. At the same time, there's a whole bit in my head of like, Chris doesn't exactly, if you look at the two character models, Chris doesn't have what appears to be less pockets than Jill, right? Chris doesn't have, like, Jill doesn't have a backpack and Chris doesn't have a backpack. It's not like Chris is just just like carrying the stuff in his hands. He's going around like he's got a shotgun sticking out, like a grenade launcher, and all that kind of thing, right? Um, I mean, I have never understood, other than game balance, why Chris has fewer infantry slots than Jill. If they design the characters differently so they look different, then yeah, okay, that's fine. Like if you give a reason for it, I can appreciate that. But they just kind of look the same. And if anything, Chris is a bit taller and bigger, so surely he can carry more stuff. So I have never understood that, and it's always bugged me. It just makes me not want to play as Chris because I have to go backwards and forwards to more of the safe rooms to drop things off. I'd have to go backwards, pick up more stuff, re-drop it off, and it just bugs me so much all the time. So very annoying to me, a detail that just bugs me. Now, there are lots of other little details about the game that I do find slightly irritating. Like, how does either Forrest or Edward get into the mansion house before the main characters? Even though you watch a cutscene and you see them go through the only apparent entrance into the house, but yet the others going through some other entrance you don't see and somehow survive to get through there, to die obviously before they get any further. But I never understood how they could do that. Or, for example, how Enrico, leader of the Stars Alpha team, is able to make his way from a different location completely to this one just like that. There's a whole bit about where actually is the mansion relative to Raccoon City and also to the training facility that Umbrella have. I mean, there's a whole bunch of geography that is very fuzzy at best. It really doesn't really make a lot of sense. Um, and even, this is a silly one perhaps, but even how come when you drop your rocket launcher near the end of the game onto the floor from 30 feet in the air, the rocket launcher doesn't break? I mean, it's a bit silly, but really, man, you drop a rocket launcher out of a helicopter onto a concrete floor, it doesn't break. Okay, fair enough. I guess I don't use rocket launchers, so maybe that's correct. Maybe that's fine. But all in all, it is a wonderful game. It truly is a wonderful game. But it is almost like a Swiss cheese when it comes to accuracy. And future games have tried to resolve some of these issues, but mostly it's like patting a bit of sellotape over a broken glass, and the water is still leaking out. But love it, just not accurate. So that wraps it up for this week. Next week, we're going to look at a little indie game that was developed about 10 years ago now about a pizzeria. Just look at his cute little face. How could that be scary, right? It can't be scary in the slightest. And surely that game is incredibly accurate with details. Surely. Anyway, please leave a like. Please leave a comment down below. If you find it interesting, or if you'd like me to change my style, maybe ranting at a camera for 15 minutes is not the best way. Subscribe and have a really, really great day, guys. So, until next time.